For the month of September, the Broken Brain is highlighting the charity Horses of Hope Therapeutic Riding Center in Isabela, Puerto Rico. Horses of Hope makes equine-assisted therapy available to youth and adults who struggle with disabilities or healing with trauma or a host of other needs. This is oftentimes a cost-prohibitive type of therapy that does quite a bit of good for a lot of people, and having a nonprofit offering this is a great change and an equalizer for people to be able to get access to this. So they're definitely someone worth your time to look into. You can go to horsesofhopepr.org. That's horsesofhopepr.org to learn more about, get involved, or donate to that charity. As always, if you decide to become a Patreon member of the Broken Brain, half of your monthly donation will go towards the charity that is highlighted within the month that you join. So if you join in September, then half of your donation each month, as long as you are a paid member of the Patreon, will go to Horses of Hope Therapeutic Riding Center in Puerto Rico.
The Broken Brain.
Recording in progress.
Hello, everybody, and welcome back to The Broken Brain. It's me, Dwight, your host today to talk about this week's dose of our little intersections between psychology and culture. And there is a lot that I'm excited to really talk about today. As everybody knows, some of the episodes we're dropping lately have been tied to some opportunities to talk about some films, independent films. Whenever a film festival comes around, y'all get to hear of the sort of like an interview adventures that I get to have with filmmakers. And this month is the Toronto International Film Festival, and I am privileged today, really, to be able to talk to Ian Bawa about your short film, The Best, which is it the best of the whole festival? You know, I haven't seen everything, but it was certainly one of the ones I'm most excited to talk about and to hear about this project. So, but Ian, thank you so much for being here.
Yeah, thank you.
As I said, now this is a short film. In fact, it's even among short films, it's well, gosh, what is the runtime? I don't have it in front of me right now, but
I think with credits 9:55. I think the actual film itself is about 8 minutes, or 8:30 at best.
Yes, and we were just saying as I was getting my bits and notes and recorders in line here. One of the things I really love about the short format is the tight, powerful budgeting you have to do with your time to get a message across. In this day where we can really, with a lot of streaming and things, people can do things as long as they want. And sometimes things become a Netflix series that could be a movie or whatever.
Yeah.
No shade on anybody with the long things, but anyway, so that's something automatically you have to approach with I'm doing something short and I want to say something, right?
Yeah, for sure. I think I think short form content is something. It's funny. I do really enjoy it. I do find it is sometimes a struggle to watch it outside a festival aspect or on my TV as opposed to like on my phone sometimes. But it's something I do like. I think that's what like the world has become more condensed in the fact that now like TikToks and Instagram stories and like we don't want to waste your time. And I think making a short films, making short films is just people learning how to not waste people's times. And I don't know. I think it's something that's why they make you do that out of film school right away. That being said, there's people that skip it and they are doing fine.
Yeah, that's true. I get, yeah. Well, and it's different mediums for different people, obviously, is a good thing too, and all that. So, but I really like it. And one of the things I love about festivals and the indie world is when you dip into it, you get to see these things. And for whatever reason, in a day and age where it's so much easier to find things, sometimes we don't gravitate towards the outlets or places where we can even find a chance to watch these. So I love to highlight them and promote them through this for people to get something really powerful as well. So, being involved with this, first of all, I like to let creators tell people a little bit about this. This is a 2-location story that happens in just two places, right? We're at a funeral and at the gym. But what would you tell people to describe this film?
It's tough. It's a tough, weird sell. But the short version of the best is it's about a South Asian bodybuilder who has to give a eulogy at his late father, or he has to give a eulogy at his late father's funeral, and he is trying to internally pump himself up beforehand, and that's kind of like it. But yeah, it is a very simple movie, which might be the secret sauce in it. I didn't think it would work. Like, I'll be honest, it is like truly a film mostly at a church and mostly at a gym. You can't get any more simpler than that. But yeah, that's kind of the bare bones of like me explaining it in like 2 sentences.
I love how you start this out with the internal monologue and and to me, though, this whole story really encapsulates a lot about several things. But I mean, there's self-esteem, there's motivation, there's self-definition, self-identity. I think it says a lot about masculinity as well. And I guess I'd be a little surprised if you didn't think that in making it. I guess it seems because the inner monologue as you start, and I love, by the way, it's very tight on him. We don't know where he is. All of a sudden, it just is, and it's aggressive. Like, I'm the best. I am the best. Talking myself up. Laced. I mean, there's a lot of like aggressive language. There's a lot of profanity, that he's telling himself. And I'm curious about that approach to what that monologue represented to this guy.
Yeah, it's interesting. It's almost an experiment. So the movie starts on, like you said, a very tight shot of our bodybuilder. We don't know where he is. We don't know what. And it's basically a 2-minute dolly shot of it coming back out and him talking about, I'm the best. I'm the effing best. And these people have no idea who I am or that I'm a god around them. And he's just saying things like this. And he's swearing, but he's not in a negative way. He's just kind of saying everything he's proud of. And as the camera reveals his wife, and then the camera pulls back more, reveals his daughter, his other kid, his other best friend, all these little things. And he talks about them in this like very positive, aggressive light. And I personally, I talk to myself a lot. And I'm very aggressive to myself when I talk to myself, whether I'm working out at the gym or struggling with something. I say to myself, I'm the best. You gotta be, because I think in the arts, you have to, the arts is very bipolar. There's days you wake up and you feel like you are not creative. You are the worst. It's really hard to write. It's really hard to do anything. And there's other days you wake up and you go, you know what was I thinking yesterday? I'm the best, and I think he's in a moment where he does not feel like the best, and he's trying to get to that point. Now he fails in the end, but he's using whatever he is around him to just bring himself up to the next level of feeling good. And yes, it is for sure male toxicity. It is for sure mental health. It's what we do to ourselves in order to feel good. Like, I think there's a reason why half the film is like internally his head and then at the gym. Because for me, the gym is a place where I feel like I'm getting a lot of my aggression and my release and my emotions out. So, but yeah, for sure, you're highlighting on everything I've struggled with and also talk about in most of my films. A lot of my films have to do with mental health and families and etc. But like, yeah, it is for sure hitting on all those notes.
What I did that stood out to me, what you just mentioned, that even though it's aggressive and even though there is a comparison of like, I'm better than everybody, I'm a god, and people don't even see it. People don't even realize. But as he goes through, and there's a toxic and a less toxic aspect of this. As he goes through listing all those people, I noticed that he's in fact complimentary to them. Ooh. Right. When he's saying like, oh, everybody's she's great. And, boy. And even though he'll say like, oh, my son sucks at life, but he's great. I love him. I'm there for him. And, he goes through and he lists all these things. The toxic part to me is kind of like everybody is it just in relation to making him a better guy because he's got all these cool people, but he also is complimenting them and saying like they rock, they're awesome. So I thought that was an interesting dichotomy.
It is for sure. That's what it was. It was this thing where it's like how toxic, and like a bit of the experiment where I wasn't sure it would work is how do you start someone so positively toxic and then destroy him like a minute later, because to spoil the movie in every way, he goes up on stage and the camera basically flips and we reveal it's his father's funeral, and he takes out a pair of glasses and puts them on, and all of a sudden he's Clark Kent, and he says his first words, and he has a very high pitched voice, and he starts having a panic attack before he can even like say his entire speech, and he basically breaks down in front of the mic, and I think it is the whole film is like a little bit fucking with the audience of just like we're gonna make an aggressive guy positively assholey loving, and then we're gonna make him extremely weak and miserable and destroy him in front of everyone else later. But it's a flip flop. It's fucking with your audience. It's playing with your audience. I did not think it would work, and I did not for sure like know if people would sympathize with this guy by the end of it. Holy crap, was I lucky? And I think part of the luck comes back to what you were saying originally. Length. I think we don't stay too long in that dolly shot. I think we're in and out long enough. I think we're about a minute, 20 in that entire dolly shot, if that. And I think we leave it the exact time people start going like, or they're not bored and they're not sick of hearing this one guy talk.
With the difference in the inner versus the outer voice, right? Where his own self-perception, and of course, this is one of those things. People who are fictional don't exist outside of the actual story. I get that. I mean, I know that, but it does, this dichotomy of him going up, and the thing that hit me is like, wow, his inner voice does not sound like when he talks. I don't know if that was a product of the anxiety and grief, or, I mean, once again, it is what it is, but it makes you start to think like, I wonder what this guy is like, how he relates to people, how he goes when he's under stress. Is this a high pitched cracking voice because of grief, or is this how he always sounds? And he may not like that very much. Is he going to be mad at himself later for crying? It starts all these questions rolling. Do you have a concept in your world of creation of like, here's who this guy is every day? Or is it just,
I think overall, I with short films, I find I'm like, once it's made, I start going like, what's the feature version of this? The voice, I'll say specifically the voice, it's like, cause he goes up and he goes, my dad and I, and we just prior to that, I was like, I'm the best.
Was it the same actor? Did the same actor do the voiceover? Okay.
We did pitch him down make him a little deeper. But yeah, truly what happened was myself and my DP were staying there. We're all from Winnipeg. I was doing a program in Toronto that that was part of this film, the Canadian Film Center. And anyways, the lead actor, the DP, flew out to Toronto to be part of this film, and they stayed with me, and it was a small, like, 1-bedroom apartment, and we were all kind of living together while, the 5 days we were kind of shooting this thing. The film itself took 2 days, but, every day. Anyways, but at one point we were just kind of like playing with the actor Mandeep and just getting to rehearse the lines and the speech. And I went to the washroom, and I don't know, my DP said to the actor, like, try it like with a funny voice or something. I came out of the bathroom, he's like, you should hear his funny voice. It's kind of good. And so he does it, and I'm like, that's pretty funny. Should we just do that? And we were like, yeah, I think maybe. Let's practice it. We kept practicing, and like, fuck, it's going to be so funny, like, if we do it this way. I'm like, is it going to be too much? Like, is it going to sound forced, or is it going to sound kind of that question you just said? Like, is it going to sound like someone's like holding it back because of grief, or that's their real voice, or does it just sound put on too much? And I was kind of questioning that. And luckily, yeah, I think it's kind of in that balance where you said, like, is this his real voice, or is this just like grief?
And I enjoyed the question. For me, that was like, it got me thinking, like, there's a depth to this guy that the monologue doesn't reveal at first. If you're like, that's how he lives, he's just this guy. And it's like, that's intriguing in certain ways, but then it's a lot more interesting to be like, I wonder what this guy's really like. How does he act? Right?
Yeah. Well, it's like, then you go like, well, is it the guy with the small penis drives a big car? Is the guy with bigger biceps have a high voice? It's like that thing is over. Like, in my headspace, he has his voice naturally. That's how I kind of saw it. But truly, I think you learn a lot about this character in the short film, where everything kind of ends up, oh, he's this way because of his dad. He was belittled all of his life. It's that. But yeah, I do go through those steps prior to like writing a character of like, okay, where did they go after this, or where were they just before this? You know, those things. So.
Yeah, it reminds me, and I want to hit, of course, what we learn about his dad and how we learn it is fascinating to me. But I was going to hit first, though. I've known so many people who have this concern when they get up at a funeral, especially a funeral of a parent, and they say, I don't want to break down. I don't want to break down. And they'll use phrases like, oh, I want to, okay, I'm being good. I'm hanging in there. I'm not crying. And I remember being, and I don't know, I haven't checked with my family to see who, so I'll just, I'll keep it a little vague. Very close family member. And verbally said that, giving eulogy about his father, and another family member, my uncle, listening to that, and my uncle immediately said, he's like, "Why not?" You know, it was interesting. It was like, "Oh, I don't want to break down. Why not? It's your dad. Why don't you want to break down?" And he was very much that other kind of guy. Who was very much like that vulnerability was a part of his masculine identity, was like very much like, yeah, I'm comfortable with my emotions and in my own skin, and just that concept. And but we all want to be understood, and we want to honor whoever it is we're talking about. Right. So it's not wrong to be worried about it, but it was interesting to hear that immediate thought of, that's odd. Why wouldn't you break down? You know, and so that vulnerability as strength obviously is not, I don't think, the social currency that this guy was brought up with.
Well, it's also like funerals are kind of weird in this aspect of like the things you got to do. I both my parents passed away. This is very relevant to my life. My dad passed away during COVID, and you know, to give you the short version, he acted in a film, and this film's kind of a pseudo sequel. The best is a movie I made in 2020, also premiered at TIFF. It was a short film, 3-minute film, starred my dad and Mandeep, the bodybuilder that's in this film. And it was about this dad and son working out together at the gym, and the dad voiceovering and saying how proud he is of the son and kind of shitting on him at the same time in a positive light. And then at the end of the film, you kind of find out why he's been shitting on it. It's a 3-minute shot on Super 8. It played at TIFF. It did really well for me. Career-wise, blew up at TIFF. It actually is now being turned into a feature. That's my feature I'm working on and shooting next year. And my dad passed away like 2 weeks after that happened. Wow. And, like once it came out at TIFF, and it was super shocking because I was celebrating with my dad. We were on all these news outlets. We were doing. It was one of the shorts I was doing really well during TIFF that year. And it was the COVID year, and at that time too, I think we're all celebrating just taking care of our parents and things. And anyways, he passed away, and my life kind of came crashing down. I was very embarrassed. And it was during the funeral, because it was COVID, there's only 4 of us allowed in the room with my dad's like body.
Those are so hard, those COVID funerals. Yeah.
Awful times. And they had this like iPhone set up on a tripod, and that's who people were live streaming. And it was so weird to just sit in a room with my dad and me and my sisters, and I just spoke to this thing. And I'm like, but the best and worst part about it was afterwards, because it was like a Facebook Live, they saved the file and they gave me the file on a USB stick. So I had the actual thing. And actually the lines the actor says in the films is from my actual eulogy. Oh, wow. But I actually did like a side for side matching because I have the film. But the other joke of it is I went up to the mic and I stood there for so long and started going, I don't know. I thought maybe I did that for like 10 seconds. I was there for like 2 minutes going, I don't know. I did not realize I was like doing that. And I think it's these eulogies are a weird custom, and we do them, and it's very North American, but it is what it is, and it's fine. And I've had to do them twice now. But yeah, I think there's this thing where you're just I gotta say these words cleanly because it's what I have to say, and I'm not gonna break down. Mm-hmm. And it's so hard. And I think also, hey, I'm not the first person to touch on this. I think I was kind of worried Succession kind of just did this recently as well. So I was like, and other movies have explored this like same kind of moment. But just how you swing it.
It's interesting. The question of a tribute, we tend to think of it as our expectations of eloquence and getting a message across versus the tribute of being decimated emotionally. And you think about somebody who you leave behind, right? It's like you don't want them to be in pain, but gosh, I wouldn't want, the idea that nobody would shed a tear, right? Seems like much less of a tribute than it's like, boy, there was this really polished, great thing. And, people wept and applauded. Hey, great. That's nice of you to have a tribute for me. But, I think of my kids, it's like, if they're sad, I think that I did something.
Right.
They miss me at least, right? And so
it's weird,
so weird, but like you say, it's weird. It's like it's this weird thing of putting death, and I think it's a tribute to your dad for it to be so hard, because obviously, I don't know. Sometimes in more complicated relationships, there's a distance from that raw emotion,
I agree.
Or it's there in different ways. Yeah.
No, I 100% agree, and I think it's again. It's funny, like a lot of my films are so personal, and then this one ends in such a weird way that people are like, do you think when you show this to people, they're going to think you did this? And I was like, I never thought of that, but no. And also, like, I think every relationship for parents and children are complicated to a degree. And, my dad wasn't perfect and I'm not perfect. And, it's all these things like that.
And neither are they, neither are the parents. Right. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. So it's like, I make these movies that are about our relationships and, it's more therapeutic. I call like a lot of my films lately therapeutic, and therapeutic for me, not for the world. It's just that. And maybe that ounce of vulnerability when I make them hits a nerve with other people that allows it for it to do well. Because I've been strangely lucky in the last few years of films and making films. So yeah, I don't know what I'm doing, but it seems okay so far.
I love it. I'm very interested in that aspect you just alluded to, by the way. So we transferred to the gym, and you're like, so here's the part you said the weird way of ending, or so. I'm curious about your choice there, because I saw an element of metaphor to what he's doing. He's got the urn there with him when he's working out, and there's a timing there to where he's struggling with the weight, and then he takes the urn, and I'll let you, say how you made that choice. Yeah,
so he's working out, he's bench pressing. He basically like I'd say like between he fails up the funeral. He goes home, and he has this like urn on his nightstand that he's like looking at, and he wakes up at one point and like opens it up and just kind of like listens to it and looks at it and puts it back. Anyways, goes to the gym, brings the urn with him, tries to bench press, drops the weight on his chest, is like embarrassed and is like mad at himself, and picks up the urn and runs to the washroom. And basically when the coast is clear, he very much like just confidently takes a scoop out, puts a scoop in his like mixing whatever or water bottle
cup that you'd put a protein water bottle,
in,
right?
Protein shakes, and drinks his dad's like ashes, and then it cuts back to him pumping iron the weight he couldn't do before. He's like just going crazy with it, and you hear the voiceover of his dad essentially doing a version of the speech earlier, but saying, "You're not the fucking best. You're the worst. You're weak. You're not strong," and like just belittling him. But he's happy and he's smiling and he's strong again. And it's just, it's this idea of just like what we need to feel like ourselves. Like I think if we're going to go like to movie world, like Whiplash is a very good example of this. It's like what precedes greatness? Is it like coddling your students, or is it forcing them to the point where they feel like so self-destructive that they'll hurt themselves? I think that what this relationship was to some capacity. So for this character,
the power there for me when I saw that was, it's not, once again, it's a question. It's not the resolution. And I think Whiplash is a good example, right? Because at the end of that, we are confronted, I think, with his dad versus his coach, right? A kind of thing of like, do you really was this a right decision? It seems, do we say it's objectively, it's not really, it more, rather than a resolution, it introduces this thought of like, is this good? Or is this right? Because, and I think that smile that he had was powerful in a sense of being like, and it reminded, in the one of the few things he did get out successfully was his dad teaching him to be strong in the eulogy, right? And here's his dad. This is the teaching method.
Yeah.
Lots of things that hit me about it. Now, I'm curious about the choice to have him actually ingest his dad's ashes, like, and then the voice comes in. What was it that triggered that for you?
I think for one, like again, to go back to this film being part of a film program I did in Toronto, there was a lot of rules and stipulations to like your idea. So initially you go to in this program, you do a bunch of stuff, but you make this short. And I pitched a bunch of ideas. I had like I'm a slate full of ideas. I was like, blah, blah, and I had this idea for a long time, but it wasn't a bodybuilder. It was an old man and or like a guy in his 40s, whatever. It was just like a very generic, boring family man. And the movie ended with um, uh, like the guy just taking the urn, like going to bed, taking the urn in the middle of the night and throwing in the garbage. And it was very much the fact that it was like, I don't need you anymore. Like there was no voiceovers, nothing like that. And it was such a weak ass ending. And everyone kept telling me that. And I knew it was too. It was just, but it was also me going, I'm trying to make this movie in 2 days with all these goddamn rules. And I was just like getting mad all the time. And I was like, I gotta think of a way to end it and still make sense. And I'm like, man. And then I think I was going to the gym. And at this point, I had the character be a bodybuilder and whatever. And I was going to the gym and I was putting like pre-workout in. And I was like, Ash is that. Oh, the correlation. It's like, it was like simple, but also, and then I was like, oh, what if he hears the voice again? I'm like, I hate the idea that we cut to a place, cut back to a place. Like, I'm like, is it too back and forth cutting? And I'm like, not if he fails the first time. Okay. Well, and so it kind of just built itself. I think in general, though, the biggest thing when I pitched this idea, when I wrote it in and people read it, in this program, a lot of dialogue that happens afterwards because that's part of it. And I remember the suggestions people were like, oh, should he like not smell it first and be like, ooh, question? I said, no, like it's more interesting to have a character make a choice, like confidently make a choice than to question their choice. I think it's way more interesting. For one, it doesn't waste goddamn people's time. Like, and two, like, and so, cause all of a sudden you go, man, this guy's crazy. Why is he doing that? You start bringing up those questions. And if he, for instance, in this moment where he takes ashes, puts it in his like water bottle and drinks it, if he questioned it there, it makes the moment more about it being gross versus it being an emotional response. And I think that's the difference, it's like someone taking a baseball bat to their car when they're angry. It's just instinct. It happens. I think it's funny if you think about like the fact that he had a scoop in there already. This was pre-planned. This was plan B. Plan A was seeing if he was still strong. Plan B was doing this and it worked.
It tied into me. For me, it hit me that he's listening, as you said, not hearing anything. He brings this in and it's almost like there's this element of wanting to be part of like what his dad represented to him too. It's interesting. And we don't just miss the nice little things when someone's gone, right? It's like the whole package of what he missed. And it also, it brings up once again, if someone's processing maybe the experience, we typically wouldn't, well, first of all, we probably wouldn't say, process by ingesting the ashes usually, right? But if we're looking at kind of a traditional approach to this, and this is one of the things that can be very tricky. People are pushed and pressured to process things in a way that is kind of the conventional definition of healthy. There's obviously subjectivity to it, but typically speaking, it would be like, don't do that to yourself. That's not, that seems like a self-destructive motivation, might even be a self-destructive motivation. Is there emotional cost to it? Certainly. But then again, there's the freedom of choice to say, I'm going to opt into my own definition of what this represents to me. Right. And I love living in that complicated space for a second with this person.
Yeah. So I think for one, like, just to even go back to what you were saying about being part of your parents or in some capacity, I have said for the longest time, even when my dad is still alive, I want to be the best parts of my parents. Will it ever happen? Probably not. But I know the shit that was bad about them. I do know. And I recognize when I do them. And I recognize the weird habits I occasionally do. And I go, oh my God, I'm becoming my parents. I do. And since my dad died, like I become more and more like him in some of the worst kind of ways and some of the best kind of ways. But I think it's just inevitable. And I think this character is like doing the extreme version of it. But yeah, but on the other thing of what you were saying, it's just, um, you know, what we do to ourselves to achieve great. I think like, we can look at this even a metaphor as like steroids in a sense. The fact that steroids are essentially legal. We all know, like, the joke is, are you natty, dude? Are you natty, bro? These like gym bros doing that. Um, it's legal. It will slowly decay your life. Like, you will probably die sooner, but they do it for vanity. And the things, like, we hurt ourselves on so many ways, for vanity, for self-improvements, for self-actualization. I'm guilty of it. I'll say that much. And I'll say also the weight falling on him, is somewhat a true story of what happened, not maybe 2 years ago, on the anniversary of my dad's death. Mentally, I'm probably not in the best spot. I was kind of sad that day. It's just like, it's a weird anniversary. I'm like, what do you do? Do you tell people? You don't do anything. I'm not doing anything. But I worked out earlier that day, and I was like, I think I did a boxing class, and I was sore and I was tired, but I was just mentally not there. And I was like, you know what I'll do? I'll go to the gym. And I went to the gym because I'm like, I'm going to feel strong. And it's the only way to distract my mind from feeling sad. And I loaded the bench press, and I did a couple of sets where it was like light, but I was like, I feel strong today. I didn't, but I was trying to tell myself that. And I put way too much on, and I asked one of the workers, like, can you spot me? And he's like, yeah. And I had it halfway down, and I felt a pop, and the thing came down. I had safety bars. I was fine. The guy helped me bar it. I stand up, and I'm like, I did something. And I started having a panic attack at the gym. And what I did find out, I did I ripped my muscle. And I was in, recovery for a few months. I had to get surgery, all this thing.
Wow.
And that was me trying to, be strong, just to like put my body in this certain way of just getting strong. Maybe that's not the right example of what you were saying, but I feel like it is in the same ballpark.
I think it's like, what metric do we use for strength? How do we measure it? And we tend to go to the ones that we're taught, right? We're taught to value, right? Yeah. This, and both societally as well. You hit the steroid thing. It's very interesting that even amongst, it's one of these ideas of masculinity where I've just seen, lots of people online talking about movie stars that will all of a sudden someone gets in, into, some action role, and they bulk up, and there's experts that look at the pictures and say, well, they didn't look, that's steroids. And of course it's always like, no, it's not. And so we not only have, use them for that reason, or are taught to use them for that reason. I'll say I've never used anyone who's seen me, but they'll be shocked to hear that I've never used them. But then also to say, nope, it was all me. And at the same time, then that becomes like a body dysmorphia shame that we're taught to have, with this kind of strength. It's very interesting. I wanted to ask too about the difference. And once again, I've never seen this guy talk to his son. That's never happened, obviously, because he's not real. But when he talks about his son in the monologue, he's relating to his son differently than his dad related to him, at least in the language he has in his head. I don't know if he's following his dad's example of saying that to his kids, the way that his dad is saying it to him, or at least we presume that interaction happened. So it made me wonder, is he a different kind of dad in his own practice?
I, in my opinion, think he is. I think he's still like a strong father, but I don't think he's like a belittling father. I think, again, it's a thing he needs for himself versus what he gives out. I think it's people with kinks. It's that. It's just like he needs to be stepped on to feel good. Yeah. He needs his dad to yell at him in order to lift weights. He needs something out of that. He needs someone to say, like the drill sergeant say, you're a fucking maggot, in order to like feel like himself. I'm a person, I'm very competitive, and I'm a person, when you say that's impossible, I go, you don't fucking know me. And I'm that guy. And I think there's something within that I see. But yeah, this character, I think, knows that about himself. Like, I think, again, this character is more self-aware than we realize. Which is why he does all the things he does in reality of it all. And yeah, I don't think he's like a type of like bad father, or like maybe bad, but like different, same father as his dad was. I do think my very quick feature version I play with in my head a lot of times is like he ends up discover like if this was like first 5-10 minutes of a movie, he finds out he's stronger by doing this powder thing that he starts saying, giving it to his kids and his family in order for them to see like what happens and see that if they get stronger. It becomes this weird like zombie movie. So that's one version. I have another version that's a little weirder, but I'm not going to go there. But yeah, I have a couple
both.
Yeah, right. If I ever write them, but yeah, again, you play with the ideas. Once it's created, and you're like, oh, it's a proven concept. Let's see what else we can do with it.
That's fascinating. The idea of bringing this in, especially if he feels like he can't or isn't doing it, because it struck me when he talks about his son. He mentions his son's struggles and then says, "But I love him." Right? There's an acceptance piece. He's not requiring his son to be what he is requiring or what he felt was required of him. So there is, that introduces that dynamic of self-awareness. I love the zombie aspect there as well. I'm curious, and you can defer this if you don't want to, answer it, but how did your dad motivate you?
It was very like as a kid growing up, and I talk about it pretty regularly these days. And before my dad died, because we had a lot of media coverage, we did a lot of like podcasts. CBC did this like hour-long special with us right before he passed away, and it was like we just talked about our relationship, and they gave me the full like raw recording, which is great, and we were very emotional with each other in this random thing that just happened. And we talked about like a lot of the like stuff of me growing up. And I was very emotional. I was more like my mom. And I would cry a lot, and he would get very mad at me if I cried. And he'd be, I definitely got slapped. But I was also kind of a bratty kid. But I definitely was like, don't cry. Don't be a woman. Be strong. Be that. I had a lot of that motivation as a kid, and then even as an adult. And one of the reasons the film prior to the best of the original film, Strong Son, one of the reasons that movie got made was because I broke up with the girl, and she kind of like broke up with me on my birthday in a really awful way, and I had to go to a birthday breakfast with my dad the next day, and I started bawling at the restaurant, and my dad, and I was making a scene, I was making a scene at the restaurant because everyone could tell I was crying, and I was just trying to hold it, but I was just hitting that point where I was like, couldn't. And my dad started going, be strong, be a man, quit crying, like started doing that. And, it was so even more embarrassing, but this was his way of motivating me, and it sucked. But it also made me very closed up emotionally. And I think that's one of the reasons why to this day I struggle with panic attacks. I struggle in therapy a lot of times. But I work on it. I try my best. So, again, doing his best was doing what he was taught. Very, my dad was immigrated from India, Sikh father, very traditional in a lot of ways, but also not. And so like, yeah, I don't blame him. This is just like kind of semi-shitty parenting sometimes, or saying the wrong things from now how we see the world today, at least. At the time, I don't know, maybe a lot of people did that. It's but like, yeah, it was in his head, men shouldn't cry, men shouldn't hold emotions, men should be strong. So.
And it's interesting how your experience also ended up, I mean, you have the self-awareness to say that too, and say, "Oh, shitty, it wasn't, advisable."
Yeah.
And it's interesting, but then you bring out, and in this film, you bring out the other side of that, is saying, "But it is what I know, right? It is what is there." Did the film cause you guys to ever have any kind of conversation about that? Him being in your film?
Yeah, I think that was that podcast we went on like basically after TIFF. Like again, he was around a bit after the fact, and CBC. That specific interview was like, I think I said hour. It was like 2 hours long. He used like, a chunk of it. But that, like, I listen to it sometimes. Like I have it kind of queued up in my phone, and I'll listen to it sometimes. We talk about that. I say like to him specifically, I'm like, he's like, oh, because they asked, I think the interview was like, how was Ian growing up? And it's like, oh, Ian was a very emotional child. He cried a lot. you know, and he's like, you know, and I don't know, you know, he's like his mother a lot. He's very emotional. He has breathing problems. And I said, Dad, they're panic attacks. You know, they're panic attacks. You know, it was that. It was literally this. And then he's like, you know, and then the interviewer's like, why, you know, was crying a problem for you? And he's like, well, you know, men shouldn't be crying. That's more for women. Like he said these things live on mic, and you know, awkwardly, I'm like, look at the interview, please don't, you know, like, please don't feel, you know, like, you know, maybe don't use this or whatever. It's whatever. She didn't, but also like, you know, I hope you're like, I think she understood, like old man, old man generation stuff. But like, yeah, like, you know, we did talk about this, and this is my feature that I'm doing is a combination of Strong Son, The Best, my other film, My Son Went Quiet, all these other shorts I've made in the last 3 years. It's about a bodybuilder living with his dad and mental health and finding your balance between physical and emotional and seeing what you can do with that. So.
It's hard to capture the lack of resolution as well, I think, because like you mentioned, in a and who knows? I don't, because you got to encapsulate it somehow. So I don't know how you address this in when you're making your film, but you know, in a movie, often that podcast interview would be where your dad would say, "And I was wrong," or something, right? And in real life, it's like, "No, I was right," or whatever. I mean, there's a complicated nature, and I'm not trying to paint. I don't know.
No,
but yeah,
yeah, no, you're right. Actually, it's funny when you say that. I think maybe sometimes that movie was like Strong Son itself was like a gift of our relationship, because I think it you know, I highly recommend if you watch it. It's on Vimeo. It's a Vimeo staff pick. It played a bunch of festivals a while back. But again, it's 3 minutes, and it's the dad kind of being like, "This is my son. He's very strong. My son has very strong arms. Gets a lot of women. My son needs to work on his legs. Women won't marry him if he doesn't work on his legs." And he starts belittling him. And then it kind of has a 180 near like the last minute of the movie, where the dad starts going, "My son sometimes skips the gym to take me to the doctors. I tell him I can take a taxi. My son says no." And you find out, and the dad's kind of last line is, "People ask my son why he takes me to the gym with him. I tell them it's because I'm old and weak and alone. My son needs to be strong to take care of me." So you realize there's like a reason to it all. And that's how I kind of see the relationship with my dad at this point was, you know, maybe those times when he wasn't perfect to me, it was his thing of him trying to make me strong in order to take care of myself when he's not there, and to take care of him because he wasn't able to by the last few years of his life. So, like I said, every relationship's fucking complicated. And it's not, like, especially I think for millennials who have aging parents at this point.
Do we see, you know, because to me also, it's interesting because here's your dad as making art with you and sitting on a podcast with you. And when I think someone like traditionalist and some of those downsides that you mentioned, I don't think of them being like, "Yeah, I'll go on a podcast with you," or whatever. So, I mean, there's that other side, right? There's that other side of like acceptance and support. At least it sounds like, right?
I also don't know if he like always, like, he totally knew the fact that I was doing well and was successful. But again, when you're not like equipped to understanding Instagram or the world of podcasting and all these things, like, I don't think he fully got like, you know, that we're going to hear, other people are going to hear this stuff and things. Even acting in movies, like, this was like for fun. Like, at the time, it's like, he's not an actor, and it's just me telling him what to do and be like, "Now do this. Don't look at the camera. Don't look at the camera. Don't look at the camera. Don't look at the camera." It's really that. And you know what? When you watch Strong Son, the reason why I think one of the charm of that movie, because it's shot on Super 8 and it feels kind of home movie-ish. It's a narrative, but it feels like a doc, or it feels like a hybrid at least. Because my dad fucking looks at the camera constantly. So I think there's a reason why that movie works. But yeah, I don't know if he fully understood. It was just more like he was retired and wanted to, you know, be helpful for me. And I think there's a point, and again, this comes back to aging parents, where they feel useless. And he did. I know he did, for sure. He didn't have friends. He didn't have hobbies. He retired. My mom died when I was young. I was his support system, and I was his primary caregiver. So him being part of my movies was a way of me taking care of him and giving him something to do.
Wonderful. it's a wonderful story, and it's a wonderful story. I mean, in real life, as well as the story that you tell, right? That you tell is the best. It's a great example of showing, not just telling, and we get to see really the insight in this little complicated chunk of the life of this person that's going through. I'm curious, is there a place where people are going to be able to see the short? As you said, your other one is up on Vimeo, Strong Son.
Yeah.
How about the best? Are we going to see that anywhere?
So it's TIFF is world premiere, so it's going to do the festival run. So it's playing TIFF September 9th and 13th, and then just awaiting festivals right now. When TIFF happens, a lot of festivals come to you going, "Can we see it? We might consider it." So that's always fun. But right now it'll probably be like the next 6-7 months is like the festival run. But I have to talk to my producers whether we just toss it up online once. Sometimes you just want to like, we did it, we hit the TIFF. Everything else is kind of like, outside of like the big ones outside of Sundance stuff, you're kind of like, should I keep pushing this or should we just settle and move on? So we'll see. But, hopefully by the next 6 months, once this festival thing's done, it will go online for sure. But for now, Strong Son is on Vimeo under Ian Bawa, or just on my website, ianbawa.com. And then my latest short that is just finishing its festival run, it premiered at Slam Dance, played Fantasia last month, is still doing festivals and doing really well. It's getting a Vimeo staff pick, I believe, on Halloween. And so it'll be on Vimeo, and it's called My Son Went Quiet. And it's in the same vein as this. It's about father-son grief, not a bodybuilder, but different aspects. It's a little more eerie and creepier, I'd say, but still drama. So yeah, I call it my Sad Dad series. I hope to have a Criterion channel that just says Ian Bawa Sad Dad series, and that'll be my legacy, and I can move on with my life and start telling comedy movies about dogs.
Well, there's an importance for it too, and I have found this with the things I like to highlight on the show. There's always a purpose that people have for a story going out, and I don't know. I heard someone say a long time ago that the stories we tell, the books and the movies, are sort of like the collective dreams of society. There's a need at times for certain things coming out, and I see trends towards looking at kind of the wholesomeness of humanity or the rawness of humanity. And so I'm grateful to you for making this, because I think it's going to be, and this kind of thing, the sad dad genre or whatever it is that you're, however you put it, this classification, I think it speaks to people. And if making it is therapeutic, then I think watching is therapeutic. If we're talking numbers, it may be therapeutic for one person to make it, but it's therapeutic for a lot of people who get to watch it. And so I appreciate you sharing.
If people enjoy it and at least get a laugh out of it, I'm happy. Like, that's the thing. Like we said, beginning, just not wasting people's time, and that's the hardest thing to do these days. As someone who just spent the last 2 hours in a walk-in waiting room, I wasted my time there and I hated it. So just don't waste people's time, and I'm happy if they enjoy it enough where they went, that was not bad. So that's good for me.
Very good. And it's ianbawa.com.
Yeah.
ianbawa.com out there to follow your work, and people can see how your feature's progressing. And that would be where they'd find this eventually. If it's available.
Exactly. And follow me on Instagram. That's probably the biggest thing I do the most, and you'll see a lot of stuff of me and my dog. My dog and I have our own TV show on CBC. Watch our adventures together. Yeah, I know. How weird is my life?
I like it. What's it called?
Finding Diamonds. My dog's name is Diamond. It's a travel doc show. So
that's fun. So
so
you can take him.
Yeah. She travels with me. When we come to, we'll be in Toronto on Thursday, and she'll be on the plane with me, and we travel around all the time together. So we're going to try Germany, I think, in December. So anyways, exciting time.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much for taking the time to share, and everybody out there as well. Thank you for listening and being part of this too, because that's sort of important for if we're going to make this going out there. But once again, thank you so much for doing this.
Yeah, no, thanks, Dwight.
Thank you for listening to the Courtemp Arts Podcast Network. To listen to more Courtemp Arts shows, visit courtemparts.com.